Hi, Ivan. It's Martin and Nick here, and today's a very special day. Martin's just become a dad. Yay! Yeah. So yeah, this is like the last thing he's doing today work-wise, and then he's off to be the doting parent. So it's great. Anyway, there you go. Just thought we'd share. All right, Ivan, we're going to get into the condition stuff first. So I've just shared my screen, and let's have a look at this property. So this is 35 Cunliffe Street, and I'm going to do the usual, which is to go through the property on the property particulars, and then we look at the condition report from the Viewer guy, then its demographics, capital growth, and sales and rental demand, then its location, and so on. So then it's the comparables, and then it's what we suggest you offer. And as we go along, we're going to score everything because that helps you. It also helps us kind of get our bearings as to what we think how we think this deal works out. So the first thing I'll tell you is that this place is a wreck. Doesn't look it, but it has never been modernized properly. And the reason I know that is because of the cornicing. So this is going to be a deep renovation, and
I predict around 15,000, but we will see. Depends on the.
It depends how deep you want to go, because we'll find out a lot more when we look at the detailed photographs. The reason being that this is a plaster and lath ceiling. Now, what's plaster and lath, you may ask? It's this stuff. So it's where you have strips of wood, and generally speaking, strips of wood, then plaster, and generally speaking, the plaster and lath, the strips are usually quite the cheapest of cheap wood typically, and then the plaster tries to put a smooth finish on it, and of course they can't get a perfectly smooth finish, so you get little undulations and stuff. It's not a big problem. It's just, it is a problem if you have water leak or something like that, and this is very likely to collapse, whereas plasterboard isn't so much so, and plasterboard's easier to fix. So it's one of those things where if the ceiling is okay, then you don't touch it. If it's not okay, then you've got to plasterboard the whole thing, and it's just a very messy, disgusting job, honestly, because
the property is between 90s and 1930s.
Yeah, and so you can see here, this is how it's held on, with bits of plaster squidging through. So anyway, it's very unlikely that it's plasterboard, because why would you then spend a whole lot of money doing fancy cornicing otherwise? Also a little bit of damp, so we can assume that this property has never been damp proofed properly, and we've got a nice mark there. I don't know whether that's damp or just people walking through in grease, don't know. But now one thing that's interesting is that this doesn't have cornicing, and I don't know, we'll have a look at the detailed pictures later. And
no kitchen, no doors.
Yeah, it needs a lot of work. And so the real question will be whether this property demands a really extensive renovation or just a tidy up. My feeling is it probably demands a very extensive renovation. Now, this is a 1970s bathroom, I would say, based on the decor. Nice big backyard, not so much privacy. Obviously hasn't been maintained. So this is probably a probate property. Now, one of the issues, excuse me, whilst I got my sweatshirt on, one of the issues with probate properties is that very often the descendants, i.e. the bereaved, they're upset, and they will typically want to sell the house to an owner-occupier. So in other words, in my experience, about 20 to 30% of the time, the property, even if as an investor you're offering more money, the fact is that they get all sentimental and they say, well, actually, you know, we want the property to go to you know, an individual, a family or whatever that will love the property, like my dear Aunt Mabel loved it. Also, it's quite interesting how there's a lot of new brickwork here. I say new, this is probably 50 years old, but you could see you've got...
Yeah, it's extension. That's the extension.
Well, you say that, but then everyone has it. So I think this is part of the original build. Now, what I don't know is whether that's just a mixture of bricks that they just happened to use when they built this thing, or because you can see the bricks on these properties here vary in color as well. Don't know.
I think what's happened that there was flat terrace house and now just they add the extension to the whole.
Do you think? Because the issue is that every house has it and it's identical, and usually with extensions, everyone has their own idea of what they want to do, and therefore you get a lot of variance.
Maybe it was like 50 years ago, everything. I don't know.
Yeah, I doubt. I mean, my guess is it's not, and it's part of the original build.
Yeah, and it has cellar, so basement, so that's really nice. It's really good property. I love it. I mean, it have a lot of renovation, but
yeah, it needs a lot of work. The other point to note here is that it's original sash windows up here, and but double glazing down here, which is also interesting. So that tells me either this place was once split up into two flats, perhaps, I don't know. But why would you have double glazing here, none up here, unless the owner wasn't well off and didn't have the money to get double glazing throughout? All right, so overall, this is it's going to be a big refurb.
Yeah.
And that's great in one respect, because when you have a refurb, so there's a couple of things to think about when you're taking on these projects. If the property is in a subprime area, we'll work out how prime it is shortly when we get into the next data, but if it's subprime, then typically a local builder will just buy it for cheap, renovate it and turn it over and sell it on. That's fine.
It's prime location.
Then in this kind of situation, you may well have competition for builders, but I don't think so, because I don't think there's enough money in it. And so then you're looking at owner occupiers who want to renovate and add value to it and so on. But
I'm thinking opposite of you. This is
really,
we sell this kind of terrace house, smaller, 2 bedrooms for 160 something in cash. I don't want to mention the person.
Okay.
Same condition. So it's prime location.
Okay. All right.
It's old but prime location. It's Stockport,
okay. Well, we'll get into all of that in a minute when we look at the capital growth data and so on. So this is, I think, we'll have a look at the satellite maps in a minute, because I just want to double check. I think these are original, all original build.
I think it will rent for at least 950, maybe around 1,000.
Yeah.
100.
The big problem I see with this place is that to really bring it up to modern standards, apart from having to... So I'm just checking to see if there's damp proof. You do see drill marks here, so maybe they have damp proofed it at one time. Because I haven't seen signs of excessive damp. Let's just have a quick look at the front facade of the property and see if we can, or the front of the property, and see if we can see any marks here. The cellar is a benefit, but if it's just dank and nasty, then that's not very beneficial. I don't know whether it has damp proofing here, but I assume that because there's a big old air gap or whatever, and you're quite high above the ground, that it would be difficult for the moisture to permeate upwards. All right, let's have a look at the videos, and then we can kind of get more context on what's going on generally with this area, because I'm looking at this kind of cold, and I think it's good when we do this in a way, because then we've no preconceived notions. What you're seeing from us is what we're seeing, and then you can kind of read us on it, as it were. So obviously at some point, probably in the 1970s, the fireplaces were blocked up, fairly commonplace thing. And wow, it's rare. It's very rare to see original sash windows in these kind of properties, I've got to say. If this was EPC'd, does it have EPC?
Yes, it's D.
Oh, really? I'm surprised it's that high.
And the score is 56.
Okay, that's
So
actually surprising since it's only got partial double glazing.
I think
Okay.
it's well built. It's an old house, but well built. That's why I suggested this property.
Yeah.
And the location is prime.
Yeah, well, and we're going to get into that, I guess, in a minute. So the thing about properties after, did you say 1900 to 1930?
Yeah, I guess 1910, 1920. So,
Can you just do a quick check along the road and just see other properties on that stretch and see what the age of those are?
Okay.
You can see those people hanging out, looking at the property, looking at the view, going, what's going on? Okay, this property. We'll talk about renovation cost, or depending on time, I'll do what I might do is just run through the calculations later, because I know Martin has to get on and do dad things. So, but my feeling is this is basically what I call back to brick. It's a big renovation. The question is it a worthwhile project? And we'll find out very soon. Nice 45, original features.
49, 27.
So what are they saying on age?
Same.
Okay. Well, as long as it's built after 1900, then generally the build quality will be better. There'll be less damp issues. Bricks will be better. There is quite a lot of spalding on the bricks. In other words, they're quite, that's where bricks kind of fracture on the outside and they kind of crumble a little bit. And that'll be due to rain and frost. And so the water absorbs into the bricks freeze and they kind of split out a bit. A reasonably modern boiler. That's interesting.
I think somebody lived like 10 years ago here, or 5. So.
Yeah, it would have been a more senior person, I suspect. Like I say, it does look like somebody who's passed away.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not too concerned about that because it's damp from the top going down. There's damp in that corner there. So this whole thing would have to be damp proofed, obviously. And the good thing about a big renovation like this is that there's an opportunity to reconfigure the property and make it a better family home potentially.
But it's really huge. I really, based on that, it's
how many square meters?
92.
Wow. Okay, that's a good size
for 3-bedroom terrace house.
And actually, that's a full height basement, isn't it? That's a full height basement. That's really quite appealing. So with something like that, there is a way. Joe was talking to me about this, the builder. There are ways of really, doing quite a lot with that, and new ways of tanking out essentially. So the old model was you just put a cement screed and block out the moisture, but there are better ways of doing it these days, and we'll talk about that. All right, let's get into the crime and demographics. Okay, now the numbers are looking very good already, I can tell you straight off the bat. Now this is a very low crime area.
Demographics are nice, I know, I remember. So and it's really central Stockport, so its location is prime.
Yeah, this is really prime.
You remember you remember I don't want to mention the name of the property. It was asking 150. It was really a wreck like this. We bought it for 160.
Is that the one by the
park?
The park. Oh, I loved that one. Yeah.
So it's nearby. So.
Oh yeah. This right. Okay.
This is even better location than that. So.
Wow. Okay. Well, we'll get into the capital growth stuff because really the deal works if the yield is good enough to make a bit of a profit, but the capital growth is really strong, and that's what it's all about. And when you look at when you get into the details data on this, it's all right. Let's just talk about the demographics.
And I want to add that this property can be even split to two flats.
Really?
Yeah, because it's
big enough, isn't it?
Yeah, you can make it like 45 meters square flat each floor.
Okay. Now I see why you're saying all the builders are going to be interested in this. Okay, well then this turns it into something exceptional. We'll look at the floor plan in a minute, actually, because I haven't looked at that, and I think we need to just see what that's all about. But okay, let's just talk about the demographics and all that. There's quite a lot of private rented around here, 25% of stock. Now, this is about 10 years old, so it may have increased a bit because there's a general trend towards more private rented, less social rented. The quite a lot of ABs here, which is interesting. So these would be professionals, doctors, lawyers, company directors, and so on, and then senior administrative people. In areas where you get a huge amount of rented property, you get a lot of C1s. But anyway, so it's absolutely prime for renting. And I think, Martin, I think you've got a very good point. I think it could be a great property to split into two. One would have to have a good look. I mean, that's a hugely involved thing. And I think if you want to bid on this property, the way I would do it is assume it's going to stay as a family house. And then once, if the offer is accepted, then you get into all of the stuff about could you split it and make it work that way. Then that's all bonus. So if it works fundamentally as a single unit, then you're all good. You know you've got your bases covered. And if you can get planning permission to split it into two, do all of that, well, then that's just gravy, as they say. You know, it's that a little extra on the top.
Yeah, and I want to say that this property, like if it's fully renovated, it will worth a lot. Okay. Especially because you will make it nice. So it will worth at least 230, at least.
Well, let's talk about the overall demographics are really good. Just overall, it's shaping up pretty well.
And can I, yeah, on the capital growth, yeah, it's good as well. So everything.
Yeah, so let me talk about that in more detail. And what's happened here is it's quite a. Let me just show you this because I always do this, and it always just brings the point home, as it were. 1845, roughly today. Each arrow represents a distinct point at which property prices reached a peak relative to affordability. And there's even one here, but I haven't included that because that was in the middle of the First World War. But you can see, relatively speaking, a little peak here. Not 8 of these, and we're in number 9. And we are overall somewhere like, I would say, we are somewhere around here in the last cycle. So we're probably about a quarter of the way through, fifth to a quarter of the way through. And typically the way it goes is that you get a big old, you just, it goes solidly, and then towards the second half of the cycle, it just goes a bit nuts, essentially. That's broadly how it goes. So we're kind of not quite in the lunatic phase yet, but we're getting there. Now, this area is very strong. And so this is MSOA data. And to explain what that is, it's about 5,000 to 7,000 houses. And what you can see is that this whole area is very strong. Now, sometimes you get like weakness, 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 and then one little good patch, but this whole patch is strong. This whole area is robust. And therefore, I'm very confident about its long-term growth. Now, another thing that's quite interesting about this area is there's quite a lot of property turnover. So I've got this new data which shows the number of sales per year based on 1,000 people, and it's a way of standardizing it a little bit. And I can tell you now that the dark border means that it was very strong. It is very strong. There's a lot going on around here. Now, that means that the area is on the change up, because when you get a lot of turnover and you get a lot of growth, it means that richer people are coming in, and then the whole makeup of the area is on the shift. So this is, I suppose, Martin, I agree with you. This is going to be hotly contested. Now, one other thing I want to just draw your attention to. This whole row of houses, and this is where Martin and I disagree a little, but I just want to highlight this point, that if you look, every single property is identical with this extent. So it was built as this when it was built, as it were, for sure, in my opinion. But the only thing that's peculiar is that you do have some variation in the brickwork. Now, that could have been, like this one here is very different to this one. My guess is that maybe this
different
had,
year.
it got bombed in the war. That's what I think probably happened. There was a bomb. It blew the back of this house out and they had to rebuild it. Because, of course, Manchester was bombed in the war. Anyway, this is shaping up to be a hell of a property. So, all right, I think we're over to you, Martin.
Yep.
Actually, before we get into this, let's just score it up for now. So this is on condition, it's 2.5 location.
But
We
we'll
haven't
go
talked about. We'll talk about that because I need to reorder all this so it's better. But anyway, crime, it's a 4.2 because it's very quiet. Demographic 4.2. Will it sell quickly? Oh, yes, it will. It'll be a 4.5. Will it rent extremely well? Yes, but we'll talk about that later. Is it the right price? We don't know. Will it yield really well? We don't know. For capital growth, it's a 4.5. Happy with those?
I think just the condition I will put 2 or 1.5 because it's very bad.
Okay. But condition isn't that important in the overall story here.
Yeah.
Because you can repair things. Yeah, so we're lucky like that. Okay, over to you.
So I just want to add quickly, the location, as I said, is really prime. And this location here, this part of the world, and it will fly. And the property.
Yeah, it's exceptional. It's really, not just prime; it's exceptional. Actually, it is so rare to get a property this size, this close to the city center.
And this price usually is, I said, like 3 bedrooms, at least 220, at least. And
but this reflects the condition, and it's going.
And you will make it really brand new, so it will be prime condition, so it will fly with rent. And if you make 2 flats, the yield will be high, really high.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm feeling already that this is going to bid high, and this will be like 190, and then it's going to need at least 30,000 in it. And so the likely outcome with a property like this is that you'd stretch yourself financially on this to buy it, and then you would have you're going to have to sink a lot of money in it, and then you'll be basically break even. So in other words, the valuation, assuming you revalue it, the valuation would be cost of purchase plus money in, but then you let it do its thing over the next number of years, and it's just going to really do well on growth. So that's how this one will probably play out. And but as I say, if you can split it into 2, then that's gravy. And so the only question we have then is, are any of the other properties flats? And if they aren't, then we don't know. So we need to know that, and we can check.
I will check now. So basically, this is the location. It's nice. EPC is this 92 meters square, really nice size. 56. It can be C. So what they said that solid brick has built no insulation. They assume no insulation. So if roof need to be changed, we don't know. That's around 20k more, 15k.
Yeah, you would try and avoid doing the roof because that's just expensive.
Maybe just fix some little part. We don't know. Windows you need to change. Boiler and gas, radiators, main gas, they're good. As you can see,
basically the whole thing needs stripping out. You might just save the boiler, but everything else, it's like goodbye. Yeah, it's actually a very high EPC rating considering the condition and.
I think this property is really nice. So the set is built on 92 meters square. So there is no any coal mining because the coal mining and exit stopped until here, and the property is there. Low risk for water, surface water, and rivers in the sea, so you don't need to be worried because just to say why, because it's not really far away from the river, but you don't have any issues. So the property is perfect. And I want to set as you can see, this is not similar, but 3 bedrooms, this is semi-detached, but look the price in this area.
What sort of size would that be?
It's like the property here are flying in the price, and it have it's huge.
Right.
It have a huge cellar. But the property is not really huge.
What is that? How many square meters?
It doesn't write.
You can, there's feet or something at the bottom.
But this is, yeah, but no. 131,
is it?
Yeah. But this is not comparable, but just to set, I will find real comparables to semi-attached. Because I find already. So I will just zoom in a little bit. So you can see, okay, 240. Okay, so this is 240. It's not same.
And also we don't know what it's sold for because we know that it's sold STC, subject to contract. We don't know the actual.
You can see this is like a really nice condition. Just the colors I don't like, but condition.
That's interesting. Now they haven't, if you look at the downstairs floor, they haven't pulled out the ceiling. They've left the original ceiling in. So you can see the coving and everything. Yeah,
so you can see like, depends what you want. Like you can see this is not same, but here it is, 230. So, and if you go to floor plan, it's similar type. So you can see that good condition 234.
So what would you do with this? Would you make it 2 1-bedroom flats, that kind of thing? Could you just do a search for flats?
Flats, yeah, I want to do some.
Super curious about that.
I will go for houses, flats.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter, maximum 3 bedrooms. I don't know. So you can see this. No. Here it is. 1-bedroom flat. I don't know where it is.
Adelaide Road. I wonder where that is. Yeah, but that's probably just.
No. I will go for rent. So. Okay. So you can
and this
see.
Is historic rentals.
Yeah, here it is. Like 700 a floor. So.
Is there a floor plan for that?
No.
You sure?
I think yes.
There's a tab saying floor plan.
Oh yes.
I don't know if there's.
So yeah, kitchen, living room, bedroom. Same.
Quite a long footprint. That narrow.
It's the same. You cannot make it 2, I guess, but you can make 1 bedroom. And here, the 3rd bedroom, you can add it as a kitchen, and here you can add living room and his main bedroom. So, or maybe or maybe you can
so
make
then
it
the
smaller.
Question is, what do you get out of it as? So if we do let's do some yield stuff.
I think this property will sell 190 because let's say that is.
I think it will too.
Yeah, because if it's rented for, it will rent. So just to show you, like.
See, if you could turn that into 2 beds and then have shared storage in the cellar, then not shared storage, but have storage areas in the cellar for each apartment. Then that makes it very interesting. And of course, you'd have storage and loft. So maybe you keep the ground floor, give the ground floor the cellar, the top floor boarded out, and have storage in the eaves in the loft, something like that. That could work.
So if you rent it as a 2 flat, I think 1 flat will be around 650, 700.
Okay, so call it 14 for the whole property. And to convert it into flats, you're probably, so it's 190, a minimum 50,000, I would say, if you're going to go all the way with it.
So 20 by 12. No,
yes, so it's going to be 190 plus 50, that's 240. And so the rent will so just to be really clear about this, the rent is £1,400 a month.
Yes. By 12.
And by 12, and you're dividing that into 240,000. And that's 7. Yeah, that gives you 7%. Now, if you do it as a single house.
As a single house. So it will be 1,000. So so then it will be everything to 20, let's say.
Yep, it would be.
So 1,000. So 1,200 cross 220. Let's say 5.5. So it's better to convert it in a flat. Maybe the flats will not rent for 700, but up to you make all the work, the rent will rise up. So at least.
Do you think it's 1,000, or would you get more for it than that?
If you make it really nice, yes, even more. Because until it's done and it will be by end of the year, if it's probate, you will wait like 6 months to be completed and so on. So it will fly. Because the location, as you see, is prime.
Should we do a final synopsis then?
Yeah, the score.
Oh yeah, let's do that. So, Thank you. All right, and then we do our final kind of assessment. All right, location. It's extraordinary.
4.7, 4.8, something like this. Yes, like it's hard to find this kind of deal.
The area is 4.5, and the price isn't great because you know it's going to be expensive. So relatively speaking, but the fact is, if we think about the growth, it's expensive today, cheap tomorrow, kind of thing. I would say it's a 3.5 on price yield. I think it would be a 3.
If you make it flat, it will be really nice. But if you don't make it in a flat, then it will not be great. So depends how you want to go. Yeah, 3.75. Because if it's flat, if you make 2 flats, then the yield will be amazing. It will be almost 7. So then it's 4.5. And if it's
so I think with this deal, it's one of those things where really, if you're going to go in on this, you have to have quite a lot of cash, because the reality is, Ivan, that you could get finance on it, but this isn't your typical mortgage and do repairs thing. So Gatehouse wouldn't touch this. Hampshire Trust Bank might, but really you're talking about bridging finance for this. Like it's a development project. So you'd be looking at bridging finance, and then you'd be looking at a 3-month build at least, because that's what it's going to take minimum. And then you refinance it for what it's worth when done. If you have to if you can split this into flats, then you're into planning applications, and that takes a long time. So planning up, you have to assume 6 months of messing around with planning applications. So let's say you buy it on day 1, you have to assume that it's going to take about 6 months to set up planning. Now, what you could do in theory is, once you know the property let's say it's offered to you, then you kind of know your game on. Then you'd initiate a planning application straight off the bat, and that might save 2 or 3 months. So you would do the planning application very quickly, and then maybe it's 3 months after you've got the property in your name, and then you can start pulling the place apart, and that's a 3 months. So whatever happens, it's like 6 months of ownership and no income. So, but the capital growth will be huge, and it'll be robust capital growth. Like in capital growth terms, they're broadly, I would say there are 3 types of growth. There is fragile growth, which is where you have a lot of capital growth in a weak city or a weak part of the country, where historically there's been a lot of capital decline. So this happens at this time of the property cycle. You have speculative growth in areas which are quite hot. So Droylsden is a good example. So it's a decent area, but prices are going crazy because there's a lot of international money piling into it. And then you've got growth like this kind of growth, which is widespread, it's robust, it's historically robust, it's very good. We're done. So yeah,
make another video, because I really must go. I'm late so much.
Yeah.
So
okay. Sorry. Well, I will. And okay, Ivan, I'll send you some messages on this. All right. Thank you very much.
Sorry about this. Bye. I must go.
Dad duties.
Yeah.